We talked about using this very simple model of a teeter-totter or seesaw, good and bad, of two opposing, good, bad, no, yes, no, whatever the two opposite ends are on the seesaw. We talked about how that's a really simplistic model that's often used by people to help make an argument. Whether they refer to a seesaw or not, you can tell that that's the model that's underlying their argument. And we talked about some of the reasons why it's not an effective model, because it's so simplistic. So we talked about, when you have lots of individual items that you're determining, are those individual items or experiences, are those on the good side or the bad side? Usually you will find that for the most part, the items are somewhere in the middle, and they kind of, over a long span of time, they tend to balance each other out. And so that's why the teeter-totter is not an effective model to argue the case either toward one side or the other. So then sometimes people will say, well, they'll adjust their argument and they'll draw a line down the middle, and they'll say, okay, everything on this side's all bad, and then the items over here, these are all good. We're just going to declare that these are. But then doing that begs the question, what about those items in the middle? What are they? And another piece of the complexity here going on that this kind of model doesn't address is that, clearly if you're talking about the distance between this item and this item here, the distance is quite great. And so perhaps that seems to make sense to declare one of these as good and one of these as being very different from it and therefore bad. But what about these two items? The distance between these two items, one of them's being declared good and the other one's being declared bad. But then look at the distance between these two items. The distance between the second set is much greater than the first set, and yet these items both of these items closer to the bar are being declared as good, whereas the distance between the other ones are being declared as, these items are declared as different things. One of them's good and one of them's bad. And so then somebody making the arguments, then sometimes where we place the line gets discussed. Maybe we need to move the line further to the right or further to the left. But all of that is ignoring and trying to avoid dealing with the actual complexity of the situation, is that we have lots of individual instances of things or experiences or events, and simply declaring any one of them as a good event or a bad event, or any one of them as, oh, this is an indicator that this thing is going to happen, or this one is an indicator that that's going to happen, is not an effective way to deal with this kind of complexity.